Welcome back to the Jaco Report. Sometimes you would imagine that being the alderman from the city's 21st ward is sort of like being the mayor of Kandahar. You feel like you could get something done if people would just stop shooting each other. The 21st is one of the city's crime hotspots, sandwiched between I-70 and Natural Bridge on the city's north side, and including fairgrounds and O'Fallon parks. The 21st has seen a lot of shootings, murders, assaults, and other crime problems. Some are gang-related, some are not. An innovative program to do something about it involves anti-crime video cameras being placed throughout the ward, but the anti-crime strategies involve more than the 21st and more than just the city. It's a problem we all face and we all pay for. Young African-American men continue to kill each other at an astonishing rate, and as that continues in communities across this country, it's creating yet another lost generation of young black men who've turned to crime and violence. Our guest proposes to try and do something about that. He's Alderman Antonio French, and he represents the 21st Ward at the St. Louis Board of Aldermen. He's worked in politics, lobbying, and journalism, probably best known for his website and blog on city politics and the city in general, pubdef.net. Antonio, welcome aboard. Thank you for being able to come in.
Thanks for having me. So
you set up these cameras up there. Now, the idea is sort of what? Like the CCTV they have in London, this stuff is transmitted directly to the police department and they keep an eye on it, or how will this work?
Sure. Well, the cameras actually feed video to our office, our ward office.
And not directly to the cops?
Well, the video is transmitted over the internet, so the police have access to it at their stations, both the downtown station and at the North Patrol station. We also have access to it in our facility as well, and we have staff there that can keep an eye on it from their office hours. But really, we think the biggest benefit of the cameras is going to be after a crime has occurred, where both we and the police can review the tape and find evidence and then prosecute. The cameras hopefully will provide a witness that we usually don't have in cases. We've had instances, especially last summer, where violence occurred in broad daylight in front of a crowd, but when the police come, there are no witnesses, and that's a big problem. It's not a lot of people causing the problems, it's a small group of people. And if we can use some of these tools to weed them out and to get some successful prosecutions on them, it will make the whole neighborhood and the whole city safer.
Talk to me about this sort of citizens initiative. I'm not quite sure what to call it that you're talking about having people patrol and sort of a community watch on wheels.
Yeah, so none of these things that we are doing are new things. We're just taking some of the best techniques that worked in other places and bringing them here. So the surveillance cameras are already, surveillance cameras are everywhere in the city, all over the country. People are used to being under surveillance like this. We're bringing that to some of the most violent neighborhoods in the city. Same thing with this new night watch patrol.
Okay.
This is something that's been around. It's actually made popular in Newark under Mayor Cory Booker there. And what we're doing is getting a group of citizens, mostly men from the neighborhood, to come together, and especially using these new cameras that we have that we can monitor wirelessly via iPads and laptops from cars, and doing night patrols in the neighborhood. They aren't in marked cars at all. They're in nondescript cars, just their regular cars. But we're just driving around at some of those peak hours that we know crimes occur, and just being that extra set of eyes and ears that we wish, we had more police patrols, but the fact is we just don't have the number of police that we would want in our community. And so we're kind of helping them out by doing some patrolling ourselves. And these people will be trained on what to report and how to report trained by police officers on how to do that.
Now, does it worry you that they could conceivably be in danger? And I say this because we've had conversations with Chief Isom and others, where as the overall crime rate goes down, that means the number of hardcore criminals you've got is shrinking. But it's like they're compressed into a harder ball. The few that are left are more vicious, are more likely to pull a gun and use it than ever before. And I'm wondering how that dynamic works out in your ward. There are not a lot of these guys, as you say, but a lot of them tend to be, the kind of people who've got no compunctions about pulling out a weapon and firing it at somebody.
That's true, and those are the worst of the worst. Many of the crimes that occur are not necessarily murders or shootings at night, but robberies, carjackings, people's stuff being broken into. And what I always tell my citizens in my community is that if we are waiting for someone else to come and rescue us, it's not going to happen. So we need to step up and start doing what people have done for decades, is looking out for one another. We can have the most high-tech security and surveillance system in the ward and in the city, but the best surveillance system is neighbors looking out for neighbors.
But that sense of community has been eroded and broken down by fear. by fear of the worst of the worst of the thugs, by fear of going out on your front porch at certain hours, by fear of saying anything to the cops. How do you get that kind of, and I hate to use a highfalutin term like civic engagement, but how do you rebuild that when so many of these good people have essentially spent years being held hostage in their own neighborhoods by these knuckleheads?
So fighting crime is one thing, but one of the biggest things we're fighting is apathy and fear. And we are winning that. We've had a lot of progress in the last 2 years. From last summer to this summer, we have had more people being engaged in block units, more people raising their hands saying they're willing to volunteer for something like this night watch. And the message that we have continually beat into all our folks in our community is a reminder that it is more good people in our community who want to just live in a safe, nice neighborhood than there are that small percentage. I mean, you're talking 1 to 2 to 3% of the people who are causing all the trouble for everybody else. And so that other 97% have to stand up and take back their neighborhoods, and that's happening.
Well, at the base of all this, I mean, you live in the neighborhood. And you were born there. This is the house you grew up in, so you've got long experience, your parents and grandparents in that neighborhood. What has changed? What went down to blow apart the sense of community and drive up the crime rate? Was it something as simplistic as hip-hop music? Was it something more fundamental like loss of jobs? Was it just a disintegration of feeling of family and community over time? I mean, you've been an eyewitness to it. What happened?
I think it was a concentration of poverty. And the difference between when my grandmother and grandfather first moved over into this neighborhood was it was a diverse community. It was racially diverse, and it was also economically diverse. The 80s and the 90s really saw a concentration of poverty in some of these neighborhoods.
In other words, the jobs went away.
Jobs went away, and the middle class folks moved out. Middle class folks moved into the suburbs, other parts of town where opportunity was. And so you do have a concentration of poverty and all the different things that come with that. But the one thing we often remind ourselves of is that the poverty is not an excuse for violence or for some of this criminal behavior. And so, you know, my mom was not rich. A lot of our folks have been poor a long time and did not engage in this kind of behavior.
So what happened? What was the tipping point, do you think?
I think it was drugs and the kind of drugs and violence that came along with crack.
Which started like 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah, that really saw a change in the neighborhood. But again, some communities have been affected differently. We have been fortunate and able to retain probably more of a middle-class population than some other Northside wards in the 21st. And that has given us something to build upon, and that's what's happening. And so we're at that tipping point where it's a little easier for us to turn the corner than maybe some other communities, and we've seen a lot of progress from last summer to this summer.
Final question then, talking about other communities. The strategies you're doing, you know, they say if you take something from one person, it's theft. If you take it from a number of people, it's research. And you've done a lot of research in areas around the country. What, in your experience with the things you're doing in the 21st, is transferable not only to the city at large, but to any other community, whether it's a small town in southeast Missouri plagued by meth or another neighborhood in North City? What's transferable that can work just about anywhere?
I think all of these things that we're doing. Really, this summer we've got kind of a three-legged approach here to this problem. One is providing some tools in the form of these surveillance cameras. And this is what we can do as government. We can come in and provide some useful tools for both the police and neighbors to kind of look out for each other. The second part, though, is people stepping up and taking back their community, which is kind of this neighborhood watch program, the sophisticated neighborhood watch program modeled after what's happening in Newark. But the last and really probably the most vital is this project that we've been talking about. We have purchased an old church building, and we're converting this into a community center. We're calling this building the Sanctuary. It's on the corner of Redbud and Rosalie near O'Fallon Park. And what we hope that happens in this building is it provides a safe haven for young people, especially young men in the community, to get them physically off the block and into a safe environment where we can hopefully expose them to some things that will help turn their lives around.
Like what?
Well, we'll have some GED training programs, we'll have some life skills programs. It will all be built around technology and the arts. So using technology, one of the things that we really want to communicate to these young men is that the world is much larger than that block. And for too many of them, their whole lives are spent on that block and they don't see too much beyond that. So we're really trying to use technology and the arts to show them a bigger world and to really hopefully change their worldview.
We'll keep an eye on it. 21st Ward Alderman Antonio French. Antonio, thanks for coming in, my friend.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. We will be back with some final thoughts and a new way you can help the folks down in Joplin when the Jaco Report returns. Stay with us, won't you please?